Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our SkyCatch DJI joint webinar. Today, we're going to talk about scaling drone operations in your organization. We have some exciting speakers with us today. We have Skyward and DPR Construction, and we're going to talk about how to scale in your operation, how to scale operations in your organization, and challenges, tips, and why do we need to scale and why do we need to use drone on big scale projects. So this is the agenda for today. We're gonna start with quick introduction. DJI will talk about their enterprise solutions. Myself will talk about SkyCatch solutions. Skyward will talk about their product and some customer stories. And then Chris Torres from DPR will talk about their challenges and how they see the usage of drones in their projects. We're going to talk about what's next in terms of next webinars, and most of the time in the end, probably about 20 to 25 minutes, we're going to have a Q&A session, so feel free to log any questions that you have during the session, and we'll try to answer them all at the end of the webinar. Okay, so quick introduction for today's speakers. We have Christopher Torres, is a technology integration manager from DPR Construction. Chris is responsible for integrating new technology to facilitate on projects, especially mega projects. One of his solutions is, of course, bringing drones into the workflow for DPR. He's going to talk about it. Sorry. Tariq Rashid is from Skyward, is a flight standards lead. He's responsible for implementing program with customers when it comes to standardization and flight operations in a safe and effective manner. Sunny Leo from DJI, Business Development Manager. Sunny is working on really penetrating with the DJI airframes to the commercial space. And myself, Tom Zeiderman, Product Manager here at SkyCatch. I would like to thank the speakers again. Thank you so much for joining us. DJI, that's been great collaborating with you on a monthly basis for this webinar. Thank you, Skyward, for joining. We have also other exciting initiatives together coming up. And thanks again for Chris for joining us. Really an industry leader in terms of using drones. Enjoy, everybody, and Sunny, take it away.
Sure, thank you very much, Tom. Hi, everyone. My name is Sunny. I'm the Business Development Manager here at DJI Enterprise Department. So we basically work very closely with our strategic partners like SkyCatch and develop solutions and hope to help to enforce these businesses to use drones and make you efficient in whatever you do. So some small facts about DJI. Of course, we're one of the largest manufacturer of UAV in the world. We take up 70% of the consumer UAV market, and in fact, we just launched our new consumer drone, the DJI Spark, yesterday in New York. But actually, DJI is focusing a lot more into enterprise side right now, but we see a great value here. So we're a company of around 11 years. We have more than 7,000, almost 8,000 employees right now. And actually half of that is our R&D team. So we have a very strong focus on R&D, a very strong R&D team. And actually enables us to expand our soft solutions offerings based on our platform. And of course, with our partners, we would like to really see a total solution and help to deploy drones in different verticals. Tom, next, please. So basically, I want to talk about a little bit about what we offer. Pinport Pro is a very easy to use platform. It's ready to fly. It has a 1-inch sensor with 20 megapixel mechanical shutter camera. So it's a very easy to use, easy to fly platform, but at the same time, it can help you collect a very good quality data, especially in site mapping. So actually, DJI and SkyCatch have worked together to have a bundle called Reality Capture Package. And so it's actually a P4P with 2 batteries and a software license, SkyCatch software. And is at a very good start to start using Pinport Pro in site mapping and construction uses. Next, please. So not only the very ease of use platform, but we also provide a very rugged and versatile platform for businesses and our user to use in very different multiple kinds of use cases. So the M200 Series is actually designed for enterprise, especially for enterprise use. And the M200 Series actually come in 3 models: the M200, M210, and 210 RTK. The M200 series are actually IP43 rated, so it can fly in rain, it's dust resistant. Maximum flight time can go up to 38 minutes, and say M210 can actually mount a dual gimbal, so it can mount an XT thermal camera or a Z30 30x zoom camera at the same time. So it's a very efficient way to collect data, different kinds of data. And also you can mount an upward gimbal. So in certain use cases, say bridge inspection, that you need to look upwards, it's a very useful platform. The M210 RTK, and also integrate the RTK module. So it allows you to not only fly more accurately, but also get very accurate GPS data on the data that you collect. So it's also something that we very look forward to push forward and to get into different kind of businesses. So I don't really want to take up too much time. So Tom, please take it back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sunny. That was great. We're really excited about the new airframes coming up, and we already got some orders for Spark to start playing here at SkyCatch. So really excited about it too. All right, so a little bit about SkyCatch. Our workflow is broken down to 3 parts. The first part is the flight app. We build a flight app that integrates with our drone as well as with the leading DJI drones for commercial. It has intelligent routing with terrain following and a repeatable data collection. That means that the UAV will remain in a constant altitude above the ground and will take consistent photos, and then you can fly it on a daily basis, weekly basis, and collect the exact same data, so it's consistent and repeatable. The next step after the drone captured the photos, the photos are uploaded to the cloud, and this is the core part of our product. We process those photos on the cloud and generate different type of models, from 2D orthomosaic, 3D point clouds, 3D mesh, contours, digital surface model, digital terrain model, and files are delivered in any coordinate system. So if you have a project with local coordinate system, or in different words, arbitrary coordinate system, we can accommodate it and output those files so you can use it, and it will align perfectly with your design models. After the data is ready to be used and viewed, the user can access our web app to visualize and further analyze the data. And this app was designed in big teams in mind and for enterprise support. So it supports multi-user team collaboration. You can 2D and 3D view the data on the web. You can import any design CAD and overlay onto the map in order to validate the design matches the build. You can run measurements of volume and area, and you can share the 3D models and 2D models via public links without the need of any credentials and login into the system. That's it for SkyCatch. Now we're gonna give it away to Tariq to talk about Skyward, their solutions, and their some good customer stories using drone operations management solution, and some tips and challenges they encounter with their customers. Thanks again, Tariq,
Thanks, Tom,
for joining us today, and take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. Next slide. Okay, so real quickly, what is Skyward? What Skyward does is we provide a drone operations management platform, and what is that? At a high level, essentially, operations management is designing and control of the processes of productions or goods or services. In this case, that's reliable, useful UAS operations. And so what Skyward does is taking, a lot of enterprises, a lot of organizations might have a little bit of chaos where they're using spreadsheets or a bunch of different tools to try to tie everything together and keep control of the process. Skyward provides a platform to tie all that stuff together in one place, so that you don't have to have a staff of, a dedicated aviation ops management staff of 10 people to do all that. So Skyward is a map, flight planning, logging, and just the ability to manage the equipment and people and keep a record of it. That's a authoritative record of it for your UAS operations. Next slide, Tom. So one of the things about aviation, most of the people who are listening to this webinar, are involved in large organizations that are used to complex operations. But one of the things about aviation is there's a lot of interconnection, between the different components, and the things that maybe when there's only one or two pilots or one or two drones, you can get away with some pretty simplistic tools and methods of operations management. But because of all those interconnected elements, as soon as you go from one team to two team, the complexity just starts to increase exponentially. And so it's no longer a matter of degree. Now it's really a different type of organization altogether. And that's assuming you're just in one location. So once you get, it's just hard enough to keep everything in one location. Once you scale up a little bit beyond one or two pilots, but once you start, going to multiple locations, essentially at that point it just becomes a challenge just to maintain oversight. The people, the aircraft, your support equipment, and your operating areas, and then that that's just to meet the compliance requirements of your organization, let alone to try to run a useful and effective UAS operations program. Just a quick anecdote. There's a term people use called rogue drone to refer to a drone in which the command and control link, the radio link, has failed, and either that aircraft either doesn't have return to home function or it's not functioning properly. So at that point in the aircraft, you have no idea where it is, where it's going, or what it's going to do. And so that's kind of what could happen. That's what sometimes happens in larger organizations where in different drone programs just sprout up in different places. They have these rogue drones all over the place, and nobody really knows what they're doing. Next slide, please, Tom. And so, again, I've talked about the nature of aviation and standardization being essential. Obviously, everybody's here with the safety record of modern commercial aviation is amazing, and the foundation of that is standardization. Is that everything that can be done the same way is done the same way every time, and that way, as soon as there's something that deviates from that pattern, they can recognize it immediately, and then. There's no question drones are aircraft. They're amazing. They're they're aerial robots, but they're absolutely aircraft. So they're not drone operations are not exempt from the same type of culture and process that has made manned aviation so as safe as it is today. So it's essential that any organization that's going to scale up has to be built upon standardization. That's standardization in process and procedures. Standardization and training. Everybody knows that your 107 certificate is required for commercial drone operator in the United States. That's just a basic knowledge test, as you guys all know. Your organization, if you're going to scale up, you need to have some standard of practical qualification that is acceptable to you. Whether it's something you generate in house or have a training services provider do. That's something that you can't. If it's just one or two guys, you can probably get away without that. But as soon as you try to scale up, you have to have you have to decide beforehand what your standard is going to be for that. You need decision rules because you don't want to make decisions on go no go type decisions in the heat of the moment, because generally speaking, in the heat of the moment, the answer is always going to be go, and that might not be the right answer. So you need to have standardized decision rules on what are the acceptable conditions either of the aircraft or the environment before you're going to fly. And then obviously for normal and what we call non-normal procedures, you don't want the guys in Denver handling the same situation differently as the guys in Sacramento or Orlando. Those things certain things should be standardized across your organization if you want to scale up. Next slide, please, Tom. So just a quick example, one of our clients, Hensel Phelps, they had a challenge with getting buy-in from their executive and legal and safety teams to allow them to use drones on their construction sites. And for those who don't know, Hensel Phelps is one of the largest construction engineering design firms in the United States. And so what they were able to do by using the Skyward platform is essentially show that they could keep, central place, keep a documented track of everything associated with their enterprise UAS operations. And that was the kind of like the key element that convinced their risk management folks that they could operate this program without exposing Hensel Phelps to excessive risk. Next slide, Tom. And then, so that was the enterprise case. So that's the kind of the homegrown, internally created drone operations program. So another case is the case of the drone services provider. That's a company that basically hires out to do drone services. So the case here is Talon Analytics, and their challenge is initially they have relatively large or complex deployment kits that go out with each crew, and they were assigned essentially permanently to each crew. And their initial challenge was just keeping all that stuff organized, away from spreadsheets and a whole bunch of different tools, keeping that I guess the inventory associated with each crew, and then that was relatively challenging to do just in one location, but their organization is geographically distributed, and so, or geographically dispersed. So then it becomes, as soon as they start geographically dispersing their crews, they need to be able to have oversight of all these different crews and all the different configurations and deployment kits. And so one of the things they were able to do using Skyward is to have linked organizations, so that each organization was kind of its own, kind of like the detachment or cell, but they had oversight of what each cell was doing and what equipment they had, without necessarily having all that stuff overlapping, so that it was overwhelming for their management team. Next slide, Tom. Okay, so what next? So one of the things I would say is you don't want to underestimate the challenges of scaling up, because just like I said before, it's not a question of degree. It's a different nature, different type of organization. But don't be intimidated either, because I think what happens is a lot of companies, they study the problem for 6 months, or they believe that they have to have everything figured out beforehand, before they actually start using drones in their business. And one of the things that one of my favorite quotes is from Igor Sikorsky. I was a helicopter pilot, so I'm a big fan of Igor Sikorsky. But he said, "Build a little and test a little." And the idea there is that you don't know everything when you're starting, so it's impossible for you to figure out all the operational components of your business or your enterprise UAV program. You need to establish basic drone operations platform, just a basic, whether it's Skyward or something else. Obviously I recommend Skyward, but it doesn't whatever you decide to do, and then standardized procedure, just a basic framework and set that can evolve as you expand your operations and then operate, and then you're actually going to evolve that, because you're going to learn by operating. You can't figure it out. You can't know it all before you start. And then check your organization for rogue drones, and then make sure you centralize oversight of your USA, oh I said R, but your UAS operations, just under some basic policy framework. But that's all I got for today. Thanks, Tom. I will pass it on to Chris.
Thank you very much, Tariq, for that. It was extremely helpful. And now Chris is going to talk about how is scaling drone operations in the organization gives value giving value to the organization. So basically, Tariq was talking about why is this important to standardize and train all the personnel the same way and to follow the same processes. At the end of the day, when everything is standardized and aligned, what gives you the value from the drone operation comes down to the data. And if everything is standardized and aligned across the organization, the quality of the data will be repeatable and consistent across the organization. Which means if you have a pilot in location A that is not as skilled as a pilot in location B, it might affect the quality of the data collected by those pilots. And when everything is standardized and aligned and following the same processes, that will ensure good quality of data and safe operations across the organization. So take it away, Chris.
All right, thanks, Tom. Well, as Tom mentioned earlier, my name is Chris Torres with DPR Construction. I'm a technology integration manager in the DFW region in Texas, and I'm actually on a mega site, so we're actually able to kind of test some of this new technology, and we're actually fortunate enough to have 4 drone pilots on staff there at the site. The site I'm going to use as an example. It's a very large site. It's over 150 acres, so I'm going to talk about a lot of stuff. You know, if you're working on a smaller project site, you know, of course, it's going to be scaled down, and I'll talk about that here in a second. So it's a 150-acre site. There's several buildings on this site. Apart from UAVs, we're actually doing terrestrial scanning as well. And so terrestrial scanning is actually, we put a scanner on a tripod and you scan. And all these scans that we're doing, even with the flights, we're all bringing that into an actual 3D model, a BIM model for coordination. We fly every day on site. We're actually using a third party to do our flight for us. So a third party company hires a pilot to come out on Mondays and Thursdays to fly for us. They process the data in SkyCatch. We use Skyward to actually do our flight planning and logging. Process the data in SkyCatch, and then SkyCatch gives them the data, and then they reprocess the data so we can use it in our authoring platforms such as Navisworks and AutoCAD and things like that. DPR as a whole, we're not married to just one drone or one specific process, and we're testing everything out. We're benchmarking everything. In this case, we are using SkyCatch, and it's a great software. I recommend it completely. Same with Skyward. Next slide, please. Oh, you already got it. I'm sorry. So the first thing, the project team asks is like, okay, we want to do UAVs, but how do we do it? How do we start? The first question you have to ask yourself is like, are we going to do it in-house or third party? If the budget allows, if the project site is big enough, then I would definitely recommend it to do in-house. There's pros and cons to both. If you're doing an in-house drone program, there is a long-term cost, a lower long-term cost, I'm sorry, and then but there is an on-demand flight. So you don't have to plan ahead of time to see something on your job site. If you're using a third party, of course, you'd have to tell the guy or wait till that Monday or Thursday to actually fly over whatever you're trying to see. The pros for doing the third party is you have a lower upfront cost, so you don't have to worry about speccing out hardware. On the right-hand side there, we actually had one of our vendors out, GeoShack. They were showing us all these new types of drones and things like that, and that's something you have to do. You have to keep up with technology. So that's the benefit from doing an outsourced program. And then you have to choose a processor company to process it in the cloud. The cons for doing a third party, like I said, it is you kind of have to schedule your scans ahead of time, and then there is a higher long-term cost for that as well because they actually have to hire a pilot to fly it for you. Next slide, please. All right, so once you choose how you're going to fly either the in-house or outsource it, like I said, we're actually able to do both in parallel with each other. We still have kind of seems weird that we have a third party come out, but in the grand scheme of things, it actually saves us time rather than having a project engineer going out there flying it, which is actually for those who haven't started a program like this, it's a really easy process. It's literally a one-button click. The SkyCatch has a really cool mobile app. You just literally hit fly, and the drone takes off on its own. You set all your mapping, it's all set for you, and it does its thing. It goes back and forth, and it comes right back at home when it's done. So they make it really easy. So you've chosen a program. So now, when do you do it? So on the pre-construction side, I would, if the site's big enough and you wanted to start doing something like, some site logistics, some planning, some zoning areas, lay down materials, trailer, things like that, I would definitely fly it to capture the as-built. Not just as a pretty photo, where you bring it in a Bluebeam, but actually, process the data and bring it into, if you're doing a BIM model, which most projects are doing BIM models now, but actually bringing that BIM model into something like Navisworks and start coordinating in 3D. On the lower left-hand side of that photo there, you can actually do a heat map directly from, in things like Recap 360 Pro, Autodesk Recap 360 Pro, which we use. It's just great to see kind of the elevation difference in grade, just as a whole. Maybe you were thinking about laying some material down, but you noticed that in lower elevation, water might get to it or something like that. So just a really good visual tool. Then, as far as daily and weekly progress, we were actually using a company to come out and fly it with a helicopter, and by doing it ourselves and even with a third party, we're saving half the cost for that just alone. UAVs are really affordable. We're using the DJ Phantom Pro and the DJ Mavic out on site. I want to get an Inspire out on site. Hopefully we can. So we use it on a daily and weekly basis. We fly video. We do the videos, and we process our data Mondays and Thursdays. And then we have in our main trailer, we have two TVs, I think 42-inch TVs, and we have a video going at all times of the latest flight. And then on one, we have the SkyCatch dashboard, where the superintendents, project engineers, project executives can go up there and start zooming in and out, do some measuring and things like that. They love it. On the BIM coordination side of things, so you still have to do some processing in order to bring it in your model. And I'll talk about one of the most important things you have to do is the coordination, the coordinate setup. If you want to bring it into a project coordinates versus survey coordinates, that's a little complicated, and I would do some research before you start thinking about that. But once you do that, the BIM coordination is amazing. On the lower right-hand side there, you can actually see that's actually a SkyCatch point cloud data that we actually downloaded from SkyCatch, and then the underground utility that we're able to coordinate the stub up to make sure it's coming in the right direction. So we have our weekly meetings. Our BIM team has weekly meetings with all the different trades. We pull up the model. We pull up the terrestrial scans that we do and the laser or the drone scan, and we're able to maneuver and coordinate in Navisworks. And then as a turnover, the client loves it because we're able not only give them photos and your typical construction document as-built, but they're getting a scanned data once a week for the entire length of the project. So if you're working 4 years on that project site, you can imagine how much data you're going to have. You're almost on data overload, which is a good thing. It's better than having enough. So next slide, please. So some of the challenges that we face, like I mentioned earlier, is project versus state plane. And what I mean by that, state plane is what you get from a licensed surveyor, right? It actually tells you, hey, within the world, I'm right here in this XYZ. That's what most people use on the civil side, but on the BIM side and more on the the MEP side, they use the project-based coordinate system. And the project-based coordinate system is just an arbitrary point somewhere in space that everybody wants to coordinate a BIM model, so everything's orthogonal. I'm sorry. So everything's straight, not skewed at an angle like it would be in real life. And so there is some discrepancies that happen when you're trying to bring the data into state plan and project. And so I would do some research on that, and I'll answer any questions if you have any questions about those two types of coordinate systems. And then I would double check that data accuracy. We've had some challenges on the top right-hand side. You can see, you can barely see on that top photo. There's on the top area, there's a little pink thing and a little brown area. That is actually our GCP. And what our GCP is, it's a ground control point. So in order to coordinate the actual laser scan or this point cloud data into our BIM model in the correct spot, you need some reference points, and that's all it is. It's a ground control point. And then, so when you set them out in the middle of a construction site, people will literally pick them up and throw them like frisbees. And so you have to make sure that you get a layout guy or a surveyor out to actually set them to where they're not going to be disturbed. In our case, we actually set them on a piece of concrete. It's a 4x4 piece of concrete, and then we set some vinyl tiles, like bathroom tiles, and we actually, that's how we do our GCPs throughout the entire site. So just an example, on our mega site, we have 26 GCPs on site to verify our data. And then, of course, I would do some of the challenges that we had was the flight planning. You know, you have to take in consideration if there's going to be cranes involved, because if you're starting out on a site and it's bare, and a year from or 6 months from now, there could be cranes out on site, and so your flight's going to have to be different because the crane could be obstructing, because you might be in an airspace and you have to stay below than 200 feet, and so you might have some challenges there as well. Next slide, please. All right, so some solutions and tips. On the coordinate setup, I would, once you finalize, hey, this is my project, this is my state plane, make sure you tell the different trades, the different project team members, hey guys, if you want this model in state plane, this is where it's going to be. These are the GCPs, these are the XYZs, and things like that. It's crucial. And once you start doing the BIM coordination with the lasers, with the UAV scans, you'll start seeing that. Second, like I said, the data accuracy. Just because it got processed, don't just assume that it's going to come in the right spot. The drone could have been high winds and the drone couldn't capture the data correctly. And it's not no one's fault. Just that's what happens, right? So I would make sure you double check that data accuracy. Every now and then, go out there. If you have a GPS and RTK unit, go out there and just make sure your GCPs are still in a good location and things like that. On the lower left-hand side, you see that little notch out. We didn't take in consideration that there was going to be a 230-foot crane. And so now that the crane's there, we have to actually fly around it. So it kind of changes our organization of our scan. And then the second thing, or the fourth thing I would do is the training. Have a good training program. Get together, talk about the rules and regulations that have changed. Small stuff like what they just released this past week about the FAA saying you don't have to register your drone anymore. That's good to know for hobbyists, right? But still, for commercial use, you still have to do it. And then the flight planning and logging, it's crucial. Like Tariq said, being able to go to one location to see, all your stats and things like that is very crucial, because that's where you start getting metrics and start seeing how it's going to, you get an ROI on your UAV program. Next slide, please. So the main takeaways, if you want to get started, like I said, the first thing you want to ask is like, hey, what kind of deliverable do you want? Are we just wanting progress site and photos? No problem. That's easy, right? But if you want to take it to the next step and start actually bringing that data into your authoring platforms, into your coordination meetings, then you just start thinking about what are you trying to produce there and doing some coordinating. And then the in-house versus third party. There's pros and cons for both. Me being a nerd, just a tech nerd in general, I love to fly. It's cool and make it really easy to fly. So I'd like to do it in-house. But there are some cases where you might not have 60 project team members. You might only have 3, and there's not a drone pilot around. So in that case, absolutely use a third-party company to come in. The model coordination, double check your coordinate system, make sure everything's correct on the Z-Valley and things like that. And then the georeference, and that georeference, all I mean by that is make sure that when you do bring that scan data and you have your BIM model, that everybody knows on the project team, hey, this is photogrammetry, and we are flying at 200 feet. So, there is some discrepancies in the data, not in a bad way, but for coordination, absolutely. If you want to get down down to the nitty gritty, then definitely take an actual terrestrial scanner out there and do a terrestrial scan where you're close to within a millimeter or two. That's all for me, Tom.
Thanks a lot, Chris. That was extremely helpful and it was tons of information on drones operations, and a little bit, you touched a lot about the value and the data. That was extremely helpful. All right, so do you want to talk about next webinar? Yep, so deep dive on accuracy. Chris mentioned some data accuracy and validation. So next webinar, we're going to learn how to control your drone data accuracy. validate your drone data, and use high accuracy data on your job site. Different use cases for using high accuracy on your job site. Some other webinars coming up: getting started in reality capture. We're going to have our beam coordination part 2. We're going to have one on energy inspection and one on thermal data to see how we can use thermal data and extract the value from the thermal image on our website. If you have any comments, or ideas, and you'd like to even be a panelist or a speaker on one of our webinars, please reach out to me at tomz@SkyCatch, and we'll love to hear your feedback and ideas. All right, time for Q&A. We got some questions here in the background during the past 15 to 20 minutes. So just gonna browse and randomly pick one. This is probably a question for Tariq. The question is, Ryan is asking, does Skyward offer Part 107 training for big organizations?
No, we do not. We do have some partners that do, so we can certainly refer you to some partners if you just email info@skyward.io, or just me directly at Tariq@skyward.io, TARIQ.
Awesome, thanks, Tariq. Questions for Sunny. When can we expect DJI to release GS Pro for Android devices? Hello, Sunny. Sunny might be muted. All right, Sunny, we can hear you now.
Okay, great. Right, so GS Pro right now is for iOS right now only. We are working on it. We just don't have an actual release date, but we can get back to Tom and then let everybody know. Because we are now working more on the GS Pro and more other functions on it to make it more functional. So we don't have a plan for Android yet.
All right, thanks, Sunny. Next question for Tariq. Luis is asking whether Skyward usable in South Africa.
It's usable, but unfortunately, it's just we have the stuff that we have airspace, but we have not yet implemented South African specific commercial drone regulations. But it's in our roadmap. So right now we have a kind of a generic safety rule based on locations of airports and restricted areas. That's useful, but I would suggest that it's going to be in our roadmap, but it's not there yet.
Got it, Tariq. Thanks a
probably
lot.
Expect that within the next 3 months or 3 to 6 months.
All right, perfect. Question for Chris. Carl is asking, do you feel that it's more cost-effective to hire your firm rather than have a small firm get up and running on a 1 or 2 project activities?
You know, given the cost of drones, have gone dramatically down. I would definitely, if there's staff on board that is willing to take the time to learn how to fly the drone, that 107 test, it's not that bad, right? And once you start flying, you'll see the benefits and the ease of use. So I would definitely try to do it in-house before I would get a third party to do it.
Excellent, thank you. Question for probably maybe Sunny and Tariq can collaborate on that. Maybe Chris, you also can chime in. Jim is asking, how do you handle flying in projects next to an airport? And this is more specifically to DJI and Skyward. Do you have any integration with Airspace apps? Tariq, you can go first.
Yeah,
okay.
Tariq, go first.
All right, so flying next to airports first. So Obviously, at the airport, if you have a 107, if the airport's not within controlled airspace, then you just fly and just make sure you don't interfere with the traffic pattern at the airport. Generally speaking, what we recommend and what we kind of put in our collateral for our compliance packages is that just if the airport's not in controlled airspace, take a look at the runway orientation. If you're within, there's basically step downs. If you're not aligned on the runway, then try to stay below 200 feet if you're going to be within 2 or 3 miles of the airport. And then that kind of steps down as you get. If you're aligned with the runway, you should probably stay below 200 feet all the way out to 10,000 feet away from the airport. There's a little bit of nuance with it, but that's kind of a rule of thumb that you can use. If the airport is within controlled airspace, then obviously in the United States you need to have an airspace authorization to do that. And unfortunately, right now that's kind of there's a portal that you apply for a waiver to do that. That's kind of a lengthy process, but fortunately, one of the things that's the FAA is rolling out is something called the low altitude authorization notification capability, and also UAS flight maps. And what they are is 1 minute by 1 minute grids of controlled airspace around certain airports. And what I've seen is that people who've applied for waivers that refer to those maps, which the FAA publishes, are getting the waivers turned around in days or weeks instead of months like it was before. Eventually, it'll be instantaneous once the system is fully deployed, probably the beginning of next year. But I would say for now, controlled airspace, find the UAS flight maps, and again, info@skyward.io or me directly. I can point you to them, and then when you submit your waiver request, refer to that map in the area that you want to fly. And then for the airports that are not in controlled airspace, you can kind of have some process in place just to make sure that you don't interfere with the traffic pattern at those airports. Sonny?
Right. So basically, if you're flying DJI platform, we do have a geofencing system that is integrated into our firmware and software. There are certain places that you can basically unlock it by yourself, but just putting in information of your own. But if it's around airports, please contact us. But for sure, you get all the approvals and Part 107 that's allowed to fly. And then please contact us or me directly, and then we can get your platform unlocked if necessary. Tom?
Thank you, Sunny and Tariq, for the answer. Next question is from William. Question for Chris. How do you manage all of the data you are collecting on your projects? Daily flights likely generates many gigs of data. Where do you store this data?
Excuse me. Sure. So, like I mentioned, along with the UAV scans, we're actually doing our laser scans. So, if you're familiar with laser scans, they are very big files, and so we actually bought a dedicated machine with a lot of hard drives in it, a lot of RAM, and a great video card. And so we actually store them on that machine. So we have a box folder that's synced to that, and we have folders every time we do a flight. We log it in. We name it with that date. If there's a particular area that we're flying, we'll include it in our name, and we just keep them all on that one machine.
Got it. Thanks. Next one is another question for Chris. You mentioned during your session some of the post softwares you use after the data is ready to be analyzed. One of them was Navisworks. Can you mention some other software that you use, and what do you use it for?
Sure. So the .las file that we get from SkyCatch, that file is a universal file. You can actually bring that into something like the scanner that we use is the Faro X330. That's just the model number. And they have their proprietary software called Scene. And so you can actually bring that file into Scene and process it through their software. So all you're doing is, it's just another gateway to accessing the data, right? The reason we bring in a Navisworks on our end is because that, for the most part, BIM, they're mainly Autodesk products on our end. that we're using and our trades are using. So they work great with Navisworks, and that's why we use that.
Got it. Thanks. Eric and Alvaro are asking, are there any plans to release the SkyCatch Flight app for Android? The answer is yes. It's on the roadmap. We are going to support DJI through an Android device. Just as a side note, our proprietary drone, our SkyCatch drone, works with an Android app on a tablet that is also given as part of the kit of our drone. In terms of timeline, probably later this year, end of Q3, maybe Q4. All right, next question. Also for SkyCatch, Ivan is asking what kind of support or services does SkyCatch offer for thermal imagery. So at this point, we have some customers in the energy and gas industry. They're simply using 3D modeling and 2D maps of thermal imagery. And what SkyCatch does is that we process thermal imagery into a 2D map and 3D meshes. And we didn't get to a point where accuracy and thermal imagery go together, but the thermal imagery can give you value in terms of extracting more information, such as gas leak or areas that transfer heat in a rate that does not meet the requirements of a specific area, and things like that. So we're going to talk about it in one of the next webinars, as I mentioned. Question for Chris. Actually, Chris is asking Chris, what level of maintenance do the GCP markers need?
Great question. So, in the dead heat of Texas here, if you're using a 3/4 inch piece of plywood, 2x2 with vinyl and painted with like spray paint, those suckers will shrivel up like a pork skin. So again, the heat of the sun here. So that's the reason we chose concrete. So once you set them in concrete, like I said, even if you put a barrier around there with some flagging and some stakes, some of these trades they'll just knock it down and run right over it, no problem at all. But once they see the concrete, it's a 6-inch piece of concrete. It's a little bit more legit, right? And we actually I'm actually planning to put like a map on each GCP telling you where you're at on the site. So once trades start seeing that, and they start seeing the other trades putting their actual total stations on top of them as well, they kind of know to stay away from them. So maintenance-wise, before we fly, like once a week, we'll go out there with our buggy and just make sure that the GCP hasn't been obstructed and they're clean. But it's not that much maintenance at all.
Great, thanks, Chris. Eugene is asking, what would be a go-to system if we're a small drone service provider company just starting up, and we are going to fly for medium-sized construction? What starter drone can you recommend for starting company and without flight experience yet? Maybe Sunny and I can collaborate on that. So Sunny mentioned that DJI and SkyCatch are collaborating on a reality capture package that gives you the SkyCatch software and also a P4P, which is a great drone to start with. Everything is automated, 5-direction obstacle avoidance, so it's extremely safe, very easy to use, very compact and transportable. So I would recommend this reality capture package. Sunny, if you have something to weigh in, please feel free.
Yeah, basically the Pinport Pro is a very good start, very easy to use, and it has all the sensors. Well, basically, obstacle avoidance sensors and very good camera to start with. So I would definitely recommend the reality capture package as well.
Awesome, great. Next question is for Chris. Darren is asking, how do you handle flying around obstacles And how do you coordinate not flying over people during the flight operation time?
So over obstacles, if the obstacle is not in your way, then you really don't have to. We don't fly low by any means. I think the lowest we'll actually fly is about 120. At 120 feet, you're pretty much over every piece of equipment out there. Even the building itself is maybe like 80, 90 feet. So that's not a problem. But when you start bringing these cranes into consideration, and we're actually in Class D airspace, so we have to keep it under 200 feet, even though the crane is at 230. Kind of doesn't make sense, but we have to keep it under 200 feet. So in that case, like I said, I showed in that PowerPoint, you kind of have to reroute your flight plan. And that's what was the other parts of that question? Oh.
Thanks, Chris. Another question for Chris is, what is the level of accuracy of data points collected when using GCPs?
So the level of accuracy, I think the best level of accuracy that we've reached, I would say probably 2 to 4 inches, I would say. I think there was a case that we might have got like a 1 inch, which, I mean, that's great. If you think about it, you're flying a $1,000 drone at 200 feet, and it's taking pictures, and you're getting this data that even at inches. I mean, that's amazing. Yeah, we're happy with that. So yeah, so I would say like an inch, 3 inches.
Got it. Great. Next question is for Skyward. What is the range of costs for your services?
So there's a basic trial that's for a single pilot account that's free, and then there's a annual subscription for essentially a business account, and that right now, depending on discounts, that can be anywhere between $2,000 and $3,000 annually. And then there's an enterprise account, which is it's kind of a tailored service, or tailored depending on the structure of your organization, which depends on exactly what how we structure, and obviously the price varies for that. But again, info@skyward.io or Tariq.
Great, thanks, Tariq. All right, I think we covered them all. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Thanks again for DJI, Skyward, and DPR for joining that. We really appreciate it. And please join us for the next webinars.